Give me the word.
Yeah, yes, we are. Go.
Okay, so this is the background story of Jagannath, how the wooden deity came into the world. So this is made up of 15 stanzas, 8 lines each. So I just have time to do 2 or 3 if you like. Yeah, I'll do the first 3. All right. Okay, and it's called Superpower Person and the Mustard Trail. Here it goes. It was a quiet moment when the king of Orissa did ponder on what he considered was time not at all a squander. Just what is the superpower person like? I feel that sometimes he will bless, sometimes strike. I have my own royal status to uphold, but in truth, I'm just an insignificant in the fold. It stands to reason there's a great one above, one to respect, and more so, one to love. At the time when His Majesty was in deep contemplation, the sage came and whispered to him about a new sensation. Tucked away beyond valley, orchards, and hill was an awesome blue sapphire deity in a dense forest thrill. Shaped in a form to resemble a god of divine dimensions, he bears 4 strong arms for protective intentions. The king was excited about the discovery in his land. He requested some Brahmins to find him as a royal command. One of these Brahmins, Vidyapati, came upon a village, a peaceful place, one not likely to be under pillage. For the ruler was a tribal chief, burly and big. Here they herded animals, especially the pig. The chief and the Brahmin did very much bond. The chief's daughter, Lalita, also became very fond. Love was in the air and marriage in the stars. It was a celebration of happiness that held no bars. Hare Krishna. That's it. For starters. Shall we start? How are we doing? Okay, go to Chandra's back. We got Calgary on. We got 3 reps from Calgary. Wow, that's the biggest population on the board. I think. We got Jeff. Jeff, how's Jeff? Wow, Jeff. Wow.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Good, how are you doing? Good. And we've got Arjuna, Rasaraj. Good. Okay, and I guess we can start. We can get going, right? Okay. Let's do the 2 pranams to Prabhupada, then the Panchatattva mantra, the Maha mantra, and then we'll get to our invocational mantra. All right? Jai. Nama Om Vishnavadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Shatharini Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much. We'll look to page 1, okay? Page 1, everyone's there, I hope, at the introduction. Om Jnana Timirandasya. Go ahead. Jnananjana Shalakaya.
Jnananjana Shalakaya.
Yeah.
Chakshurunmilitam yena.
Chakshurunmilitam yena.
Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
I was born in the darkest ignorance.
I was born in the darkest ignorance.
And my spiritual master opened my eyes.
And my spiritual master opened my eyes.
With the torch of knowledge.
With the torch of knowledge.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto him.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto him.
Okay, we're looking at chapter 10, right? This is called The Opulence of the Absolute. And I believe we're on text number 2, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so it's 10:2. I'm not giving the time, it's chapter 10, text 2. Okay, na me vidu shiragana prabhavam namaharshaya ham adir devanam maharshinam cha sarvasha. Neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences, for in every respect I'm the source of the demigods and sages. Okay, would somebody like to read the first paragraph, please? One volunteer. Vaishnavi,
Yeah, can I
you're
go?
the host. Go ahead.
As stated in Brahma Samhita, Lord Krishna is the Supreme Lord. No one is greater than him. He is the cause of all causes. He is also stated by the Lord personally that he is the cause of all demigods and sages. Even the demigods and great sages cannot understand Krishna. They can understand neither his name nor his personality. So, what is the position of so-called scholars of this tiny planet? No one can understand why the Supreme God comes to earth as an ordinary human being and executes such wonderful, uncommon activities. One should know then that scholarship is not the qualification necessary to understand Krishna. Even the demigods and great sages have tried to understand Krishna by their mental speculation, and they have failed to do so. In Srimad Bhagavatam also, it is clearly stated that even the great demigods not able to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They can speculate to the limits of their imperfect senses and can reach the opposite conclusion of impersonalism, of something not manifested by the three qualities of material nature. Or they can imagine something by mental speculation, but it is not possible to understand Krishna by such foolish speculation.
Very good, great. Would you like to ask someone to do the next paragraph, please?
Yeah, Curtis, are you there? Can you do this next one?
Yep. Here the Lord indirectly says that if anyone wants to know the absolute truth, here I am present as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I am the Supreme. One should know this. Although one cannot understand the inconceivable Lord who is personally present, he nonetheless exists. We can actually understand Krishna, who is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, simply by studying his words in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The concept of God as some ruling power or as an impersonal Brahman can be reached by persons who are in the inferior energy of the Lord, but the personality of Godhead cannot be conceived unless one is in the transcendental position.
Thank you so much. That was great reading. And Vaishnavi, can you get someone to volunteer the next one?
Vasant, are you there? Can you do it? Or anybody else who, Mansi Ganga?
Can I read, Maharaj?
Yes, go ahead.
Please.
Hare Krishna. Because most men cannot understand Krishna in his actual situation, out of his causeless mercy, he descends to show favor to such speculators. Yet, despite the Supreme Lord's uncommon activities, these speculators, due to contamination in the material energy, still think that the impersonal Brahma is the Supreme. Only the devotees who are fully surrendered unto the Supreme Lord can understand, by the grace of the Supreme Personality, that He is Krishna. The devotees of the Lord do not bother about the impersonal Brahm conception of God. Their faith and devotion bring them to surrender immediately unto the Supreme Lord. And out of the causeless mercy of Krishna, they can understand Krishna. No one else can understand Him. So even great sages agree what is Atma, what is Supreme. It is He whom we have to worship.
Well, thank you so much, all the readers. Good. So let's look at this verse a little more closely. Let's acknowledge who exists in this world as far as intelligent beings. And I'm not discrediting animals. Animals can be very, very bright, very intelligent. They can be very perceptive and intuitive also. But we're going to address human beings. We're going to talk a little bit about the demigods and what is above them, or who is above them. So let's talk about us Homo sapiens, us people who are here on this earth, trying to make some sense of this world. We're let's say trying to probe into our buddhi, our intelligence, and trying to explore what is this world and what's the purpose behind it. We constantly, I mean, not everyone, I'd say a lot of people are just totally stoned out. They don't bother with these kind of questions, but the inquisitiveness that is part of the human psyche is such that it has us wondering, well, what is the source of it all? How did it all really get started? And so we're left with this particular question. And, the Bhagavad Gita is there, which provides an answer. Okay, so we can understand it theoretically. How can we appreciate it on another level? How can we feel it? Okay, that's where bhakti fits in. Bhakti yoga comes into our lives, we practice it, and we get some, let's say, reciprocation from it. We start to not just visualize, the supreme power, Krishna, but because of our reading, but we start to also perceive him. He reciprocates with us through our prayers, through, if you really kind of like move in life with discernment, and you will actually appreciate that there's the hand of God there, it's working. But we cannot know everything about the Lord because we don't even know everything about ourselves. We don't even know much about our past. We have a lot of things that we forgot. For instance, this has happened to everyone, I'm sure. You're in a crowd, you're at a party, you're at the Rath Yatra, whatever. So, oh, Maharaj, you're Prabhu. How are you doing? It's so good to see you. I haven't seen you for so long. And then in your mind, it's realizing, oh God, I don't even remember this person. When was it? And then, you don't want to embarrass yourself. And I've been in situations like that and said, oh yeah, everything's great. Just nice. And how are you? Oh, I'm fine. And how's your family doing? Maharaj, I don't have family. I'm not married. So, I learned, you got to learn to ask the right questions, and, maybe you're trying to remember, get some reference point. Well, how are you doing in your neck of the woods? And then you're hoping they'll, say, oh, in Boston, everything is fine, but if they don't say, then you're still stuck in a quandary, So you're hoping they'll say something and you hope you won't embarrass them. So it's like that. So we forget, we have a memory. Krishna says in the Gita that he is the cause of knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. That's basically the way he is. He doesn't forget. He knows us. He knows what we're all about. He knows what we've gone through. Vedaham samatitani varitamani charajuna. Krishna's telling Arjuna, I remember everything. I remember everything about the past, the present, the future. I know about your past, but you don't remember. You don't remember. When did our life begin? Well, sometime after God, sometime after the Creator. So it's not possible to know. We can understand from this verse why demigods have a hard time, and demigods are advanced beings. They're very perceptive. They're very, for the most part, they're intellectual. They, they're very advanced. They're like blessed beings. We can call them universal dignitaries. They are celestial beings. They watch over us. They can even monitor us. They usually are in charge of some kind of elemental department, such as water, air. Those are the popular ones, right? The Surya, the sun, and Chandra, the moon, and Vayu, the wind, and so on like that. And they are very perceptive, and they get around, and they most of them have admin responsibilities. They're administrators. But despite all that really good karma that they have harnessed, they still have their own doubts about their own cause. And hence we have this verse, neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages. Let's talk about sages. Sages are usually, they're called munis, M-U-N-I, and they're also very, very perceptive people. They're humans, yes, and they are able to absorb many of these stories about the source of all. But really, in terms of details, it's hard for them to grasp as well. So everybody has trouble to understand their origin, and we do as well. So Krishna is pretty much, everything's intact for him. He knows exactly what has been happening in the past and what's going to happen in the future and what's going on in the present by his presence as Paramatma. But we are left to be somewhat bewildered. We are left with patience and with our implementation of bhakti. We will become more perceptive. I mean, mind you, our faculty measures start to fail. The people and devotees included get dementia. We start to lose things, and you forget a lot of things, and you start to just, your memory is bewildered, and just, everything starts falling apart. Therefore, it is necessary to be a little bit trained and go for a purging through studies of the Vedas to know that the source, the cause of all causes. So you don't have to question anymore. You just have to accept. For myself personally, I was wondering, why are we here? What's this creation all about? Why the stars? Why the moon? How did it all get there? And of course, I believe in a kind of God. I didn't get any details. How did he do it? How did he throw those stars up there? Did he, it's like some fairy dust, he threw it up. How was it possible, right? So I came to practice bhakti, devotional service. And I would say that even though I don't have all my questions answered, the major ones were answered. And I can say I can live peacefully in comfort, and I no longer have to feel lost, in this world. I feel that I'm found. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Amazing grace, etc. So this is a little bit what the verse is about. If the sages, the rishis, who control their senses and who are very perceptive about the things around them, with the external world and the internal world, if they have a bit of a problem trying to understand the cause of everything, then what to speak of us lowly creatures, us scumbags, us we are just commoners in this world. What can we know, because we have such a limited powers to comprehend. So this is it's a good verse, I would say, to help us to understand our position. We're small, the Creator's great, and that's it brings about some kind of humility. It's a verse that invokes meekness, so it's a good one for that. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this, what we've said so far? May I point out a couple of things? Interrupt me if you like, I don't mind. Everybody knows the person by the name of Vidura. Yeah? He's in the Mahabharata. You know, he has his brother Dhritarashtra, the blind king. Vidura was the younger brother. Vidura was very wise, and that's what the name implies. Vidu, he knows. He was aware, and he got smarter. Once he went for a long walk. He got insulted in the palace of the Kauravas, and he went for a long walk to clear his head. Hint, hint, that's sometimes what you have to do. All right, you have to go for a long jump or walk. Then things will become a little more, like say, fit in place everywhere. Yeah. As knowing how Krishna creates, he's just how Prabhupada explains it in simple terms, even children can understand. Okay, I was born of parents, you know, of my father. My father came from a father, and father came. I'm putting a little plug in for Father's Day, which is around the corner. And you keep going up the line, you keep going up the scale, father, 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 father. And then finally you come to, well, the first person. That person who fathered all is Krishna. Ahang bija pranapita. I believe that's in chapter 14. Krishna's the seed-giving father of all living beings, all races, all genders. No, you know, humans, let's say, other than humans, Krishna claims to be the father of all, the original progenitor. And we have no reason to doubt. I mean, sometimes I meet people say I'm God, or you know, I met one fellow, he said, where are you from? I said, everywhere. What's your name? I don't have one. So if you really want to put someone to the test, you can ask them a few questions if they say they're God. And this is what happened to me once. I was doing Sankirtan on Yonge Street, which is the main street here in Toronto. And myself and two other devotees, we were all three of us brahmacharis. We got picked up by the police. We didn't know why. We went to 52 Division. They were questioning us. They let the other two devotees go. They had me stay, and I had to stay overnight in a prison. Now, before I got into the main prison, they put us in an interim place, you know, where all these jailbirds, you know, inmates are all in one cell together. And I met God in the cell. And I say that a little sarcastically because he came to me and I said, I'm God. I said, oh, okay, you're God. All right, so if you're God, why are you behind bars? And I thought that maybe he picked up one of Prabhupada's books because he used the line, I'm here by my own sweet will. I just had to laugh inside, you know. And I said, well, if you are God, then why can't you work your way out? He said, I will do that on my own time. Okay, so if you're God, can you show me your Virat Rup? You know, I'm dying to see it. The Virat Rup is universal form that is outlined in the 11th chapter, the chapter that's coming at the head. And there's incredible detail there. And I was just putting him to the challenge. I was saying to God, well, can you show me your universal form? And again, his answer was, you're not ready to see it. He just went on like that. It was kind of an interesting conversation. Okay, when will I be ready? You know, and you know, it just went back and forth. He said something like, oh, when you fully surrender, I'll show everything to you. Anyways, I almost felt like showing this, you know, at that point. How dare you to declare yourself to be God, you know? So anyways, I've learned in the past that don't spend too much time with people who come across like that. There's either a little bit of a wire disconnect there, and no sense in wasting such time. The time is very valuable. So trying to understand his God, we can take, if we just want to accept what Krishna says here in the Gita, it's fine. I don't see anything comparable to what the Gita has to say in terms of God's existence. So I see Mandalaram's got his blessing hand up. Mandalaram, tell us what's on your mind.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, my obeisances. With regards to kind of the original person, and I was listening to Srila Prabhupada, and it was talking about how there's 8,400,000 different species of life. And then Srila Prabhupada said there's 400,000 different species of humans. What does that mean? Like, is that just races of humans, or what does 400,000 different human species mean?
Yeah, the Bhagavatam does give a little bit of a breakdown on the different species, and that some are considered to be aquatic, some are the mammals, and so on like that. There is a breakdown there. So when it says 400,000 species of what we call a human, there are 400,000 different kinds of human beings. They're all they have a big rating in the Vedic department.
Does that mean races or like mentalities or
both? Yeah, different levels of IQ, different levels of skin, not just skin color, because as far as we know, the skin colors, there's not too many. It's like a crayon box. If you buy those old-fashioned crayon boxes, do they still have them in the market? So when it comes to humans, it's very few, and definitely when it comes to races or when it comes to color, there's what can we analyze? We see people are like the northern stock, like Scandinavian, Northern European, and then you have the Southern European, which are of a different color. You can see it, and then you have what's called the yellow folks. It's probably racist to say this, but people way on the eastern side, the Orient. And I can never understand the breakdown of color because I don't see anybody that looks very yellow. They look very pale to me. And what people call white men or white women, they're usually more beige to pink color. I don't know where the white comes from. And you can see various forms of dark, like in India. In the north, people are very light-skinned, light complexion. And in the south, it's very dark. They have also kind of like kinky hair, and so you see differences there. When you go to the east of India, you have two kinds of people in Bengal that I see. Those who are kind of like people have very fine features. Their bones are not very big, and they're not very tall. And then a lot of Bengali folks they have a little bit sort of like round-faced, and look a little slightly more stocky built. They look like Orientals. And so I on the Western Front, it's sort of like in the middle, sort of fairly brown to fair. Africa, you've got different combinations there. It's and the Aborigine people down under, so there's different, and we take into account the various planets as well. What we may see here on Earth is maybe a limited number of these kinds of people or species, but we have to take into account other existences, other spheres where some kind of celestial being or type of human lives. So I know it's a pretty astronomical figure, right? 400,000. That's a big, that's a little smaller than Hamilton, Hamilton, Ontario, and which is probably bigger than the population of Gainesville, right? I imagine. And then, Cleveland. Andy, do you know the population there? What's Cleveland? 1 million?
I was thinking I was going to say like a million and a half.
The greater Cleveland area, somewhere in there, right? So 400,000, when you look at it, it's not so big, but it can be a little bit, cause you to shake your head a little bit, really rattle your brains a little bit. Is it really like that? Well, Shastras have that. And it is about different mentalities, less about skin color. There are many different kinds of the people in the world. I think psychologists will analyze this about 4 different types. The Gita also talks about 4 different types. But then there's many, let's say, gray areas in between. So there are lots of different kinds of people. Yeah, definitely. You go to work, don't you? Don't you meet different kinds of people? No 2 people are alike. Yeah, we are a complex bunch, we're a complex bunch. If I go for a walk in the evening, I see raccoons, they all pretty much look the same. And maybe not to them, to each other, but when it comes to humans, there is such a diversity, so much, and it makes us an interesting species, for sure. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, Maharaj, thank you so much. When you were saying that, I was kind of thinking, or came into my mind that, what does a human being, I guess? I mean, someone who has more advanced consciousness, who can kind of, come closer to Krishna. So I guess, yeah, the spectrum is quite broad in that sense.
Yeah, it is. The range is incredible, and from very pious to very impious. Some people are very dharmic to the very adharmic level. Yeah, it's very stretchable when you're talking about human beings. Extremely. Good question.
All right.
Yes.
A question. I would like to know from you how to answer the famous, I guess, silly question that the atheists, they put about God when they say, so God is omnipotent, okay? So can he create something that is bigger than him?
Well, do you know how big he is? I mean, what are you implying, that God can do anything?
Because if we say no, means we are limiting him. No, he cannot create something that is bigger than him. So we are saying, we are putting a no, but nothing is impossible for God. So
right.
That's the
so
point.
The thing is that, let's talk about it just a little bit. Okay, let's just talk about Krishna as of a certain size. We can say he might be several feet tall, maybe like when he was roaming the earth, he was like about 8 feet tall. That's what they say. And so that's that. And yet what he has delivered, Parasha Shakti, the energy that he's put out, that has been, projected from his very being in the form of Vishnu, is massive. It's big. Yeah. But then what do you mean bigger than himself? We have the story of Vamana. He was just a little kid. He was a little cute little Brahmin boy with an umbrella over his head to protect himself from the sun. And he'd be walking around. And, he was very small. People were so impressed with him when he entered into it, like a ceremony. So, who is this amazing creature? Vamana, So he looked very small. And then what he did was he expanded himself into a gigantic form that took up the universe, basically. And then he was supposed to take 3 steps of land. That would be his. So he took 1 step, which was half the universe. That gives us an idea how tall he was. Second step was the second half of the universe. And then what? Yes, Bali Maharaj, the donor. So where am I supposed to put my 3rd step? And Bali Maharaj, in all his humility, he said, I believe you're supposed to put it on my head. I surrender to you. Yeah, so God is small, but he can create something bigger than himself. He's done that in as one avatar, Vamana. So that's one thing. When Krishna releases his energy to manifest the pradhana, or what we also call the Mahatattva. Everything comes out, all the planets are invoked and so on like that. But then so it's very big. But then he also has the power to pull it all back in. There's an exhalation and then there's an inhalation. So God is able to do that. No other human can do that. Nobody else can do that. I mean, isn't it like that? We could even look at Krishna as a little child, and yet he was able to contain within himself the whole universe, the cosmos, the 3 worlds, or sometimes they say the 14 worlds. He was able to, hold that all inside of himself through mystic power, through this yoga maya energy, atma maya, spiritual energy. He's able to do that. So to answer your question, yes, he can. But he can also make it small again. Whatever he makes that's big, he can shrink it. He usually does. He always does. It's part of the cycle of life.
Beautiful. Is he only Prabhupada and his disciple and the Vaishnavas, they can answer these questions. Other groups, they cannot answer. They will say no. And no means, so he's limited. Thank you so much, man. That was wonderful.
Well, you see, I am not his true disciple. I don't follow him very well. I'm also not a devotee, but I have picked up on a few things that he's been able to say to us. Good questions, and they're related to our topic here.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I have a question. Obeisances.
You have a question about obeisances?
No, humble obeisances to you, Maharaj. So Adam and Eve, it comes up when we read the history. They are the original beings.
In the biblical stories, right? The Abrahamic religions, that is their story. Yeah.
So how does it fit into this?
Into our theology?
Yes.
Well, I'm not sure which presentation you're basing yourself on, but we're talking about a man and a woman that were created, right?
Yes.
Adam was there. He's like we compared to Brahma. Right? Brahma was a secondary creator. It gets a little more complicated in our tradition. There's the original cause of all causes, Krishna, and then Brahma appeared, and from Brahma came the whole manifestation. So he's an interim kind of say generator of beings. He's like a progenitor. Yes, we can say that about Brahma. So he's the first one, and he obviously demonstrated some limitations, like the story of Adam and Eve. They didn't know everything in full, but they did go for accepting some level of enlightenment. They believed in God, and I guess as the story goes, they were told not to approach this one particular tree. So they were told about limitations, and this is also a message that should come to us from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we study the Gita carefully, it will come through. And what is Krishna saying in the beginning? Well, here you are. I am your Ishvara. I'm ultimately in charge, and just for you to be reminded of that, I have these Shastras, and I also have my representatives to teach you. So, to some degree, Adam and Eve became somewhat warned about, to be obedient and so on like that. And in the Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, Krishna is talking about, in the beginning of creation, there were men and demigods, and there was something called yajna, sacrifice. So, in other words, people were supposed to do sacrifice, and then they would become enlightened. Brahma also appeared on the scene from that lotus stem, and he was wondering, what is this all about? What does it mean? And he was inquiring about the origins of the world. And so the answer came back to him. Krishna expressed to him through the playing of the flute that he would enlighten him. So he was the first yoga student, you can say, Brahma. And Tene Brahma Rida Ya Adiki Kavayu Muyantiyat Surya. So it is Krishna who enlightened Brahma, and therefore he heads up our initial school of thought. Brahma heads up our sampradaya, as we say. And, after he became enlightened, he was empowered to help in the procreation process. So he helped. And one of the ways that he did was, he produced children. And those children begot children, and so on and so forth. So I guess you can find in it, this story, some parallels with the biblical teachings. And we also know, like Adam and Eve made a mistake. They didn't pay heed to their limitations. Brahma did the same thing. He stepped over certain parameters, and he misjudged Krishna. And so he had to pay for that. And he had to go back into a position of humility. Once you lose humility in life, you've lost a kind of a luster. So where there's humility, there's foundation. Where there's humility, there's, a chance to grow and to be big. But if we're the opposite, we're an ego or megalomaniac, and we look down at everybody, that is the biggest problem. We're looking down at everyone, and we will suffer tremendously for that attitude. So, we can explain to people what is our story. And if they're very receptive, I'd say not to get too detailed. We can talk about the Vishnu's lying on the causal ocean and like say Lakshmi Devi is massaging his feet, and while he's being massaged, Vishnu, who's male, is having a pregnancy. So it kind of reverses roles. And then the Lord becomes pregnant, and then it comes to a point of maturity. He must now release, I don't know what the sound was, what it sound like, whatever. Something like that, like some big rush. And hence all the living beings that are there, and the Mahatattva, all the elements that we know, a conglomerate of it, and that's called Pradhana, sometimes called Mahatattva. And then the Lord glances at that energy, and he injects into it, inserts into it living entities. Yeah, it's almost like the seed of the Father is going, and it's projecting itself, so that many living entities are manifest, many species come about. So there are some parallels to the story, the biblical story, but I think you're going to find a lot more detail in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's much more exciting.
Yeah, thanks, Maharaj.
Yeah. Any other questions, Bruce, that you may have? We're doing good.
Maharaj,
Yes.
I want to add, I don't know if you've heard about this. Somebody was saying similarity in Brahma and Abraham, the word in between the two names.
Yeah.
And
Good. Brahma and Abraham. Is
yeah.
that what you're saying? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I've heard that as well. Brahma refers to spirit. When you say you put an A in front of it, you kind of cancel it. Abraham. Abraham. I don't know linguistically if there's very parallels, ties with each other, but yeah, I think it's very interesting to note that. there are some words that we find in, like in the Middle East and from the Sanskrit base. Yeah, there's a lot of similar sounds. Yeah, but you know, Brahma is there, and I think that's just good enough. It's fun to speculate a little bit as to how these stories came about. In some of our indigenous cultures, the people they talk about, you know, there was a tortoise, and the tortoise was responsible for giving birth to the world. That's like a basic storyline, outline of it, but that's what they believed in, that there was this massive turtle, or a turtle that gave birth to the whole world, as turtles were considered to be sacred creatures. And they are also revered very much in the, you know, in our tradition as well. We have one major avatar, the Kurma avatar. Good. Anything else for Roots? All right. So let me see what verse 3 is all about. It's a long one. I'm a little scared about that. Yeah, see if there's something else that you can come up with, and then we're certainly happy to stay on one verse per week if we can. Just remember that we are very tiny against this. The rishis, of which there are many, the demigods are many, and then of course the Supreme Lord is, you know, represents everybody pretty much. So we're tiny. Or how dare we think we can know everything about God? Let's look at some significant words there. Some that you have to get familiar with, okay? So na means never. Vidu, we already talked about that, like vidura. One who was very knowledgeable, one who knew quite well. And here the word vidu comes from the word vid, or sometimes ved. Ved comes from being able to know the things of this world. Sura, a person who's called a sura, is a demigod. So that word is there.
Can I use it?
Yeah. You have a question?
No, you keep.
No, I'm sorry.
Hello. Okay. Shall I continue?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
Maharaj, can I ask a question from the previous chapter, verse 34, Manmana Mad Bhakto, Madai
Yes.
Namaste. So there is a word there, Maharaj, engage your mind always in thinking of me.
Yes. Yes.
Like we are in the office, you know, always tend to get busy in the projects. And my experience, like I continuously 3-4 hours working on something, you know, I always forget.
Right.
And is it for grihasthas this always this how does it?
Yes. It works. It still works that way. That you have to understand that you've got a job because of God. You may be fired because of God. You got a job in order to raise funds to take care of your family. You know, that's God's arrangement. Yeah, in this way we appreciate God under all circumstances. Okay, you have a daughter, right? She's well mature now, but when she was very young, and you were a young grihastha, right? And you were probably thinking about her all the time, you know, especially because of her needs, right? And you were probably thinking about her during her growing periods. Yeah, school. You said, we're doing this job for her, right? So it just kind of continues like that. You're always thinking about doing things for her, right? So in this way, we can appreciate that while you're busy at something, whether it's mechanical or it's one of those kind of workplaces where you really have to just sort of dredge your memory, or you got to really get to promote that, get that intelligence, you know, very activated. You know, whether it's any of those kind of backgrounds, still you're always thinking about your loved ones. And that's what it means to always think about him. Maybe it's on the back burner, but it's on the stove. The thoughts of Krishna. Right?
Okay, thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah, so we have a lot of things to do, but behind our daily tasks, we have it in mind. I'm thinking about my kids. I'm thinking about my spouse. So I'm just giving a practical parallel to the situation.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj.
Mm-hmm. But that was good. That was good. And then, it's fine. You brought us to the last chapter. You reminded us of something that was very important. Okay, and then let's look at Prabhava, origin. Origin. I'm looking at opulences. What do we do? Where did that come from? Demigods, Prabhavam, origin. Opulence. I guess that's what it means. Not, never. If you look at their translation, word by word, it's I'm just trying to see what you've got there. Prabhavam, origin, opulence. Okay. Maharshaya. Maha means great, and Rishi refers to sages, holy people. And then Aham, this is a word you're going to come up with quite a bit. Aham means I am. And then Adir, origin. And when it says I am, it's referring to Krishna. Adi means first. First of all, the gods, Devanam. And then again, the word comes up, Maharishinam, great sages. Rishi means sage. Sarvasha, in all respects. I'm the source of all. These are the words that pull together the shloka, the verse, to make it what it is. All right. How's everybody doing? Yes?
Do you want to finish the Jagannath poem you were reading?
Well, sure. I started with 3 stanzas, and I can just brief you all what the first 3 stanzas are about. The first one is about the king of Orissa who's wondering about the purpose of life and about God. And we're calling him the superpower person. It's almost like the supreme personality of Godhead. We just call him something different. And he was hearing, the rumor was going around that there's this special deity made of sapphire, and being blue, looking blue. And he's tucked away in some cave somewhere, or cavern. You can hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, okay. So then the king was anxious. He wanted to know where he could find this deity that's kind of tucked away, being worshipped secretively. And so he sent Brahmins in all directions. Go and find. So one Brahmin, he came to a tribal group, and they were herding pigs. And so this Brahmin, his name's Vidyapati, he fell in love with the princess, the chief's daughter, and so they got married. And so that's where we're at. Okay, and the Brahmin's name is Vidyapati. So here we have it. If you please listen carefully. This is the story of Jagannath and how he came into the world. Vidyapati moved in and observed an interesting pattern. The chief would leave at noon to go to a mysterious cavern. He would be secretly gone for hours and return smelling fragrant. Very regulated he was, as if working as an agent. Vidyapati asked Lalita where her father does go. With a slip of the tongue, she said what exclusively she didn't know. The chief was disappointed that their secret had been broken, but eager Vidyapati asked for a compromise and there to be taken. The father-in-law agreed for him to join on a one-condition journey. So Vidyapati was blindfolded before they trekked a trail quite thorny. He privately and cleverly dropped mustard seeds along the way, so as to leave a future marker and not to be led astray. In time, they arrived at the mysterious cavern destination. Vidyapati could now view an image beyond imagination. This Vishnu deity of blue sapphire and aesthetic power melted his heart, while the chief offered ritual flowers and incense till time to depart. Now back to the trail, blindfold again after the visit did end. A heavenly voice spoke to the Brahmin, "You must tell the king." Subsequently, the two fragrant friends did not remain as such. If this sensitive message would reach the chief, it would be too much. Moreover, the deity spoke one day to the chief, something that would cause him tremendous grief. "You must share your services with the king." There could not possibly be a more crushing thing. Tension built up to what became a serious kerfuffle. It seemed that the superpower person arranged a shuffle. Vidyapati fled anxiously to the king's posh palace and told the king of the deity more beautiful than Borealis, and of the mustard trail, and of the foresty cavern. All was said to satisfy his majesty's sweet yearn. In haste, the two left for that mustard trail, but were shocked to see no deity, just emptiness prevail. The king made an abrupt decision to arrest the suspect thief. In his mind, it was none other than the notorious chief. But suddenly the heavenly voice cried out like thunder, "On top of the nearby hill, build a magnificent temple of wonder. Release this bound man, as he is innocent, and refocus." Now listen to the details as I give you notice. "Henceforth, you will not see me as a divine blue image. Prepare to become familiar with an ecstatic wooden visage." The temple was erected, and time passed on, but there was no sign, no deity, no wood, communications cut. The king became discouraged and entered into deep thought about life's passions and losses and battles being fought, about unworthiness in having a visualization when life is actually meant for self-realization. The king resigned to fasting until death, a gradual departure until the last breath. Okay, we just got a little bit more. Are you guys okay? Prabhu's? Tell me.
Yes.
Tell me this. Okay. Hope once again surfaced from the otherworldly voice, the same one that formerly caused the kings rejoice. Go to the ocean side, and so beyond the misty fog, the king saw auspicious markings on a floating log. A log now so heavy with the weight of the universe. The helpful, fragrant chief appeared to lift what seemed to be a curse. With all his brute strength and his genuine devotion, he mobilized and set down the log for a sculptor's notion. Many craftsmen did come forward to try their hand, but against this tough wood, their tools could not stand. Welcoming himself was an older man, at first quite mellow, man of skill, but also a feisty type of fellow. He made a commitment to sculpting not one, but 3 forms. Superpower person, his brother and sister, all looking uniform. The agreement for timeline is in days 21. So he began to carve away in labor and in fun. The sculptor made a condition to finish unless interrupted. The king took this seriously to ensure deities were constructed. The tapping sound persisted day after day. On day 14, suddenly the sound vibration was neigh. His Majesty was most anxious. He had to look. The craftsman was gone. King's feelings were shook. 3 images stood there, very incomplete. They lacked color, lacked hands, lacked feet. The king considered himself the greatest of offenders, but in reality, he was experiencing the art of surrender. All along, superpower person had expressed some communication through actions, messages, and dreams came divine information. The last words in the king's dream said, "Your breaking your promise was simply my pastime. It's nothing to dislodge us." The king was revived. He painted the three forms in color: in black, Krishna; in white, Balaram; in gold, Subhadra. You'll love her. The king took this divine event a step further. He arranged a parade of chariots pulled by servants. And by the way, the king's name is Indradyumna, who represents one of the great monarchs of India. Vishvabasu was the chief who demonstrated brain and brawn. He always smelled really good and like the sun shone. The chariot period, Rath Yatra, goes on all over the world, and the story of superpower person or Jagannath goes unfurled. Hare Krishna. Jai. So that's it. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
We'll make that available if you like. So please look at the next verse for next Thursday. Please invite your friends to the call. We'll just get on to the next verse. Think about it, read it, come up with questions. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Haribol.
Hare Krishna.